Thank you for being here. I think most of you know that this is going to be an interactive session, right? From the description you've seen, everyone's smiling. Cool. So we're going to talk about culture a bit, and we're going to talk about culture in a generic way, but also culture at Mindera. Okay? And the first part of this would be to understand what you think about the culture in your companies, or what you think about work culture in general, and what do you value the most. So who would like to start to say what you value the most in a culture? Guy is with the mic, and he can pass you on if anyone wants to speak.
What? Why me?
Why not?
That's a valid question. How do I summarize it?
What's important to you in a work culture?
I would say getting the job done is, I mean, you're working, so that's basically priority number one, right? But the way you do it, you can do it a lot of different ways and achieve the same purpose. So at the end of the day, if you actually get the job done while having a happy team or having a happy workplace, why not do it, right? So culture for me is getting the job done with a lot of happy people, and what was the other thing? Oh, and a lot of common sense, I would say.
Okay, so happy people, getting job done, and common sense, which is the less common of the senses. Anyone more ideas about what do you value, what's important to you in a workplace?
Passion.
Sorry, passion, who said passion? Passion. Passion about what you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Feeling valued and feeling valued and feeling that your opinion matters and that you can participate in the company's processes and decisions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Having recognition of what you are doing, right?
Yes, also, yes. I
And
think so.
feeling valued in the work that you do and in the interactions you have with people.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe I should feel like my work is going to be useful.
Okay.
That will make me care for what I do instead of just doing this stuff and just there it's done with no passion.
Okay.
Kind of a mix of everything everyone just said.
Yeah, caring for what you do, and that's going to be, there's value in what you're going to deliver as well, in the project that you're working in. Okay. Anyone would like to add?
Also motivation, whether may it be from the work that you are doing, that you drive to, but also from the people you work with. You are motivated by them, you learn by them. Like you can learn from the project in a technical point. You can learn from people, from other things that technical side won't give you. And for me, motivation is a big one.
Okay, motivation and learning as well. Anything else? So we've been talking about a series of behaviors, a series of values, and that's all part of culture. Because culture is a series of behaviors and beliefs and the way we do things in a group. And work culture is exactly the same thing, but in a workplace. Either is a profit or a non-profit organization. Culture is what is defined by everyone. It could be something a bit more imposed or something that surfaces spontaneously, or actually both. Many times it happens, a company wants to have a certain culture, but then something surfaced that they were not expecting. So all of that in conjunction is the culture that makes up a company. And that reflects in the way people behave, in the way people talk, in the way people work, in the processes that they choose to make things happen. And I'm going to talk a bit about what we value at Mindera. And that will reflect in what we do as well, and how we do that stuff. The first thing I like to talk about is responsibility. This ties very tightly with autonomy. So autonomy and responsibility go together, hand in hand. And responsibility is about everything is everyone's job. So you seldom will find someone at Mindera that says, oh, that's not my job to do. It's not in my description, my job spec description doesn't say that. Because we understand the value of everyone's participation in everything that we do. And that allows us to collaborate, that allows us to ask for help, to be supportive, and also to provide feedback to others of how they are doing things. This means, for example, that if you see someone coding and you see something that could be done in a slightly different way, maybe it's going to be more efficient, maybe it's going to connect better with something else in the project that you know. If you don't tell that person, maybe that person doesn't know. So it's your responsibility to let them know of more information that you have. So this also fits in the responsibility part. So that part is super important, that everything is everyone's job. And this also means that people will have initiative and collaborate in changing not only the culture, but the way we do things. So we are evolving and building the culture as we go along. The new people that join in the company means that the culture will shift and change a bit because it's participative. Everyone is joining in the culture and contributing towards that. The second thing that I would like to talk about is looking for solutions. So if we've seen something that we don't like or we think it could be very different, this is not about putting a paper in a complaint box and expect that someone else does it. That's not how things work here. And you can do that. We don't have a box, but you can do that. You create your own box, put the paper in, but nothing's going to change. The change has to be done by the people that want to change. So if you want to change anything, for example, you're looking into a meeting room and you said, this table like this, it's not going to fit what I want to do here, so I'm going to turn this around, I'm going to ask some people for help, we're going to move this table around. And you can make that decision. Definitely can. What you can't do is to say to some people, oh, I think this table should be changed. The other person thinks the table's fine. You are the one that wants to change the table, so just change it. Or look for help for people that think that's a great idea and that we should change the table, and then just do that together. And that brings me to how we make decisions. Everyone can make a decision. We work in self-management because we think it makes sense to us. There is advantages and disadvantages in this, as with any structure of any company. But we like the advantages that it brings, despite some of the disadvantages that it has. And how we make decisions is we look for advice from people that have experience in a certain situation, a certain challenge. We also look for advice for people that will be impacted by that decision. That's super important. If you're going to make a decision that can impact the work or the life or people around you, you should definitely listen to what they have to say, because that can change the decision that you're going to make. And this also implies that when you make a decision, you will have to kind of accommodate the responsibility of the outcome of that decision. And it's not a contrasense. I mean, it's not the opposite, me saying that everything is everyone's job and me saying also that one person makes a decision. The responsibility is still there, and it's important that people take ownership for the decision that they made. So that's why we tend to do things like this. The other part would be the learning, the opportunity for learning that you receive from, we have 150 people in the company or a bit more, spread throughout San Diego, San Francisco, LA, Leicester in UK, Porto, Coimbra, and lately Berlin. And there's a lot of people here. So we like to think ourselves as bringing the whole self to the company, not just our kind of work side of us with a certain behavior and a certain way of dressing, but also all the knowledge that we have, everything, all the personality that we have, bring it to the company. And that in the learning process is super important. We like to take risks, we like to make mistakes as well, because those are important in the process. And the fact that we can learn from each other. For example, I can tell you that there's definitely people here that can change a wheel of a bicycle. if that's needed. And if you, for example, have that challenge, I'm sure you can find someone here that has that. It's not really work-related, to change a tire of a bicycle, but it's definitely a knowledge that some people will have, and there's a bunch of things that people know here. And the willingness to be curious about what the people know and to also share what you know is also essential for our culture. I mean, in a place where there is no bosses, there is no managers, there is challenges, of course, like any other place. And I think the learning curve for this culture, it also has to do with the impact that other organizations have in our life. If you think about your education process and education system as it is or as it was and when you go through it, you have the teacher that is basically the boss. That person will tell you what to do and will demand things from students. And the students, although they are there to learn, the position hierarchy is below the teacher, right? And the students have to do whatever the teacher says. And that systems, alongside with most organizations, teaches a way of doing things. And I think the challenge here is to unlearn some of those processes and be open to new processes that emerge. There are several companies in the world already doing self-organization, self-management, and trying structures that are centered in people. And I think there's a great value in it because I think it will turn out in a more humane workplace. And I think I'll go back to you guys and try to listen a bit more. And I'm sure what I've said cause a lot of questions to jump into your mind. So I would like to invite you to ask questions about Mindera, about what I said, about culture, to make comments. Whatever you think is relevant and you're still lingering in your mind, please go ahead. Who wants to ask the first question?
Okay, so the first question is, what led you, since the very beginning, to even start thinking about self-management?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the
I
first
think
question
for the examples of companies I know that have chosen to go either self-management from the beginning or switch to self-management, it was mostly the same thing. I was seeing processes in other companies where I worked that were not working out for people. They were working out for reports, for spreadsheets, for processes. They were working out for control, but they were not working for people. I mean, every time in one of my previous companies, we went to the process of evaluation, which is something that we don't have in Mindera. It will be 3 months of pain, hell, sadness, and disgrace. Of course, in the end, there's some people that are happy, but...
sorry to interrupt, and probably at the end of that process, in the following year, you end up discussing again how to do it, because in the previous year, it didn't work out.
Yeah. And we continue to do iterations of things that science is already telling us that it's not working. And I think the challenge is to listen to science sooner than in the past we have done. We have the example, for example, of the doctor that in the end of 1700s discovered that if he washed his hands between delivering babies, the women would die less. It took 70 years to adopt this practice. And it's unbelievable that we have science backing up something and we're still continuing with the same methods, expecting different results.
Okay, so my last question is, in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge of working with the methodology that you use?
Okay. I think the biggest challenge will be to unlearn what several systems have done to kind of format the way we do things. The education system or any other companies that we have worked with. Because we will be trying, and that's natural, to bring the processes from all the other places that we've been to fix the things that we have here. And that's natural. It's like an immediate thing that we do. It's normally not going to work. because things have to really be discussed. And I think the challenge sometimes is to mature and to grow as a person, because we have to do so much communication, so much, in a discussion we have to go to a common place. And ideas are different, and we're not going to change our values, but we can change our mind based on the people that we have around and the needs that we have at the moment. And those discussions sometimes can be a bit challenging for someone that is not used to do that. Okay, just tell me what to do, or I'll tell you what to do, and that's so much easier instead of having this discussion. But we're learning so much with this that it's incredible. Okay, thank you.
Did this self-management methodology had any impact on client relationships? When do you have to explain this to your clients, or is it transparent and they don't need to know, basically? Or
Yeah,
how does this work?
we do explain. I think it's part of our kind of selling point, I suppose. Part of the value we have is the culture we have, not only for the people that work with us, but the people that work with us as clients. We tend to, most clients we have also have development teams with them. So this is mostly a work between teams, a work that depends on teams on the other side. They depend on us as well. So it's very collaborative, and a lot of developers talking to developers from both sides. There's definitely value in us trying to figure out how this is going to work out. And I think all relationships with different clients are different. And I think there's value in that as well, because this type of culture teaches us to adapt very quickly and to adapt and to find solutions, like I said before. So even if there is a challenge in communication with a client, I think we are very well prepared to kind of accommodate a solution that works between the two. But we also try to challenge the client on the things that they already assume that are going to be in a certain way. For example, having one point of contact. I mean, we like to show the client the value of having more people, because it's not just about us being able to, as a team, ask questions instead of going through a PO or a PM and then going back to their PM or PO. It's also about, if they ask questions, they have a number of people responding, and they do not have to wait for the process of getting to the PO to be available to answer the questions. So there's value and there's challenge in that. But I think it's a two-way situation where we learn. They learn with us and we learn with them as well.
In some cases, clients are even interested in learning more and actually get some training on the topic, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's true. What do you want to know more about Mindera?
So Mindera has 2.5 years, something like that. What would you done differently if you would start Mindera now?
It's a very interesting question. I don't think I would have done anything different. I would have done it like 5 years ago. Maybe, I mean sooner. I hope more people adopt this, because I think maybe 7 years ago I didn't knew this could be real, And I've been in companies with a lot of hierarchy, a lot of processes, and I think when I suddenly realized that this was not working for people, I was trying to investigate what would work. I mean, it's like, and I discovered that not everyone is doing it like, most of the companies. So I think doing it sooner, I don't know, there's companies doing it for like 35 years. And I wish I was there, I think that's the case, I think.
Do you think that companies fear to lose control of their teams, their employees?
Yes, there is fear. There is fear, a lot of fear of losing control. And I think there is an assumption that when you're running a company, you have to know the numbers and the graphs and you have to predict everything that's going to happen. There's budgets being made for 3 years, for 5 years, for 12 months. And then there are meetings or sessions of work that last for months to see if the budget was achieved or not and why it wasn't. And then a few more months to prepare the budget for the next year. In a world where everything is changing all the time, it just seems slightly weird that we try to plan so much and then try to force things to happen in a certain way. And then spend a lot of time and invest a lot of time trying to understand why it didn't happen in a certain way. And then we try to accommodate that learning with a new forecast, and then it doesn't happen again in that way. Or we just force it to happen. I mean, I have a really strong opinion about budgets. I think budgets sometimes can, and this is because of planning and control, I think budgets can sometimes, imagine that, for example, we are planning an event, like this one, like Tech Day, right? And we say, okay, so Tech Day is going to cost 5,000 euros to do. In a place where budgets are followed and reviewed and controlled, either the person's thinking, okay, I have to spend 4,995 so I don't go over budget, and no one asks me why I didn't spend the money that was actually, so I can't spend 4K, because people are going to ask me, so you must have not done something right because you didn't spend all the budget that was forecasted, and they cannot over budget. So for me, the idea that the budget is a prison, is like we are slave of a number, really kills creativity and kills the purpose. For us, the purpose for this day was to share knowledge, and if that's going to cost more 100 euros or 200 than the budget, I don't think we had a budget, but anyway, that's a good thing, because what we achieved was the purpose, right? And the purpose was not fulfill the budget of 5K, because that's a weird purpose, you know, because people are here, and the objectives or purposes are about people, are not about money, are not about, you know, fulfilling a budget. So I think there's a lot of fear to lose control. And control, I mean, for us, it's a dial. There's control on one side and trust on the other. And we like to think ourselves as much closer to the side that has the trust. And I think, again, I mean, the way that economy has been done, and company management is more towards control, because people like to feel the safety that things will happen as they think it will happen, as they predict. But I think we lose so much with that. And maybe it's working for other companies. I mean, for us, it's working in this way better. Okay.
If I was in a company that didn't have self-management, and I did realize we have problems, and I looked at self-organization as a possible solution, and I asked for your opinion based on your previous experience, how would you summarize what self-management could bring to my problem, my company as a whole?
Well, it's difficult to answer because I don't know what is your problem. And
a lot of processes and boring stuff, numbers.
Okay.
What you said, basically.
Bureaucracy. And,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I mean,
so you value more control than trust, and you know, control involves a lot of processes and a lot of papers. I think the advice that I would give to any company that wants to shift towards a more self-management way of doing things, I wouldn't say like fire all the managers, like an article I read a few years ago. I would say look at the way you treat mistakes in your organization. Look at the way you behave when someone makes a mistake. Because if you can't realize that mistakes are part of the process of learning and are important to be accepted as a really cool stuff to actually move forward, you cannot move to another structure. Because people will fear to make mistakes. Because here, I mean, at Mindera, we make mistakes all the time. I mean, this is new to us, so we're trying to navigate in an ecosystem that might work on this way. Let's try this part, you know. we're trying the salary transparency group, and it could go very wrong and it could go very right. I think it's going to go fantastic, but we don't know. And if we are afraid of making mistakes, I don't think we've ever done that. We would ever do that, the salary transparency group. So first advice would be try to understand how you see mistakes in your company and try to treat them as part of the process, as an important part of the process, as something that you can cherish, that you can learn from, an experience that you could share to other people so other people can learn, as something very important. I mean, you look at a child trying to learn how to walk, and if they fall, you don't say, okay, never do that again. If I caught you doing that again, falling off, I'm never going to let you walk again. So, a baby will crawl and will walk and will fall and will tumble and will hold to things until they master walking, and then until they master running. And if you don't allow mistakes in the process, you will never get to that point. So first, treat mistakes as a regular thing, as a good thing.
Thanks.
Okay, so we all know that self-management also has its downsides and problems. And what would you say that is or are the hardest problems that Mindera is currently facing in terms of being a self-managed company?
Okay, challenges that we have. There's always challenges all the time because this is a process that is ongoing. I mean, it's not fixed and now we're just running on, on a stable speed. Sometimes we go faster, sometimes slower, we try different routes. I think everyone that joins, the challenge will be to unlearn things, but also for the people that have been here for 2 years. We're still trying to unlearn some processes and trying to figure out what are the processes that work for us at this point. Safe enough to try. And I think the challenges are that, because we have to have a lot of communication between ourselves, and we have to kind of create a way of doing things every time a challenge appears. And I think if we had another structure, the processes were already kind of established and written down, and everyone knew what they were, and they were probably the same as last year or 2 years ago. And here, I think they keep changing and shifting, depending on who is here and what makes sense at the time for the people that are here. So I think that's the most challenging thing. Any more questions? There's nothing else you want to know about Mindera. You've learned everything. This is fantastic. Okay?
So, for you to build your culture, and for all that you said, I believe that it's safe to say that it's more of a curiosity, but it's safe to say that your recruitment process has or give as much importance to the personality of the person, because to work here, the person has to be trusted, has to be proactive, has to know what he's capable of doing, don't have to be afraid to make mistakes, have to accept them, has to improve. So mostly you can encounter people that have technical skills, good technical skills, but they could not work in here if they don't have the right personality. Or you try to change it or module people to work here. How can you find people? Or
so recruitment is quite important to us, and I think we don't try to change personalities because that's quite difficult to do. I mean, especially values. We do value people that like to learn, that like to experiment. They are humble enough to understand that they don't know everything. They're also available to support people or to share what they know. Also a bit of flexibility. I would say there's a lot of diversity at Mindera, but there is a certain degree of flexibility in the mindset of people that we tend to hire. We also value if the people understand that their idea is not the truth of the world, and the other ideas actually compose the reality. So, and they're open to discuss things, and they're open to change their minds. But there are different levels of all of this that I described. Some people are more flexible than others, and some people like to learn more than others, or like to share more than others. And there's also the technical aspect, of course, and the process is 3 or 5 interviews. Really depends on the candidate, on the people that are interviewing, on the role. But yeah, we try to understand if the person has a certain mindset that could fit better what we are trying to do here. But that doesn't mean like we are always right. Sometimes the person doesn't either understand what we are doing, or we didn't actually got to understand what she would prefer. And sometimes we have to, say that, this is not going to work out. But most times it works out. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you so much for being here and for all your questions. I really hope I was able to share enough for you to have a better understanding of what Mindera is. If you still have some questions and you weren't able to get them to answer now, or if you remember something after you leave, you can always send us a message or an email, and we'll try our best to respond to you. Okay, thank you.